Hey everybody, this is Kevin Deline, and I'm excited to welcome you to my podcast called Shop Talk, where we're going to interview local entrepreneurs and community leaders to hopefully get actionable insights on how they've built their lives and their businesses that you, the audience, can take with them and hopefully implement into your life and your business. All right, Buck, thanks for joining me here.
Thank you for having me.
For everybody who doesn't know, this is Buck. He's formerly from, was it B&C Metals? And now
BC Custom Metals.
BC Custom Metals.
Now Elkhorn Roofing.
Yeah. So if you guys caught our episode with Matt from Elkhorn Roofing, we mentioned Buck a few times, but I've known you for a long time, since I was in high school. So
yeah,
it's probably 2015-ish.
So I was going to say 6-7 years. Probably,
yeah. So it's been a long time. To be honest, I've learned a lot from you. You know, I worked at South Shore Club, and we worked together on a lot of projects for those homeowners. But you and your sphere of contractors helped me learn a lot about homes. It was a kind of a catapult into what I'm doing now. And so I don't know if I ever said that to you, but I'm very grateful for what you've imparted on me in the years. So
well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
So you've tell me a little bit about your story. I know the only thing I know about you is you're the metal guy, right? I've known you to be gutters and standing seam roofs and just anything wizardry with roofs, but you know a lot and you've been around a lot.
Yeah. So my dad ran the lumberyard in my hometown growing up, and then when we were old enough and capable enough, we would go work for a lot of his friends, old school guys, no nonsense kind of. Tough guys to work for. And then out of high school, went into the union, did concrete, actually worked on Miller Park, and just was a little too young. They didn't really believe at that time that guys could get promoted that were younger than some of the older guys. But, through my dad, we were taught to read blueprints and had a good base. And then that didn't work out. So then I went into actual like designing roof trusses, floor trusses, walls. Did
you have to go to school for that, or was that just kind of
I did
training?
Yeah, no, I did. I want to say it might have been 3 months up in Canada, Barrie, Ontario, Canada. Came back and then realized, I'm not a computer guy, and I didn't enjoy any of that. And then my brother-in-law, took a small break from construction as a whole. And then my brother-in-law is like, well, come work with me for a while. And then if you hate it, go back,
Mm-hmm.
First house we worked on, multiple $1 million home. And then kind of in my mind, it had clicked that there's money here.
Mm-hmm.
Just stick with it, you know. And
that was in roofing, or was
that was the architectural metal. That was the first thing that I ever did short of fabricating was we were down trimming out a house, a residential house. It was like I said, it was really expensive, and we were trimming it out in milled copper.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to solder all our joints and do all that. And like I said, the size of the house was ridiculous. And then I think it was like 20,000 plus square feet. And then
sort of palace. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was just like the light bulb went off and you got to get good at it,
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was it. That was the beginning of it, So,
and then you got into the metal world and been doing it ever since?
Ever since.
So how many, I don't want to date you or anything, but how many years is that?
I don't remember exactly when I had started, but it's well over 20 years now, probably closer to like the 25-ish years, but construction as a whole, like 32, I think is where we're at now,
Mm-hmm.
So.
The industry's changed a lot in those years, right? You've been through a lot of highs and lows and everything in between.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And watching what's happening in the trades is a little depressing, but I mean,
honestly, that's one of the reasons I want to have you on too, is because you have a front row seat to the stuff that we see a lot of, where it's just there's a workforce shortage, there's a care and ethics shortage sometimes, and I think it's important to shed a light on it so that people that have ideas on how to fix it can help do it, right? And maybe there's a couple of good people out there that can really make some impact on it,
Yeah, I mean, if we're the ones that are doing it, it would be, you got to get them young. I mean, I just had this conversation the other day. when I was a young kid and you'd go to a job site in the summertime, there was 5 or 6 other kids with you, like your age or, give or take, a little bit older, a little bit younger. And you knew that everybody was being taught the right way.
Yeah.
And now what you run into is we get into the field and there's kids that don't even, they can't read a tape measure. They don't understand a speed square. They don't understand a framing square. They can't read a level, and you're building somebody's home.
Yeah. And well, nobody, and it's not their fault for not knowing. It's just nobody's teaching them or caring to teach them, right? They're just, like you're a body, you can carry a 2x4. Cool.
Yeah. And you put your tool belt on and,
Yeah.
and you go to work, and a lot of the problem that we're running into now is buildings are not level, square, plumb, and they'll pull you aside and they say, can you make it look normal? Well, within reason, right? We were talking earlier, we were just on a building that was 2 1/4 inches out of square. We're dealing with steel. Like, how much pull and push do you think
it's not
get
fabric, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's methods to cheat it to make it look symmetrical on the ends. But now you're asking us to spend a lot of our own time and money to
fix somebody else's stuff,
fix it. And,
do you think does that stem from companies being on tighter margins because things are all so expensive and people are shopping cheaper bids? So then they're just trying to throw anybody with a body in there? I guess, where do you think that stems from? Is it like contractors are being squeezed on margins because everything's more expensive now and they just need to throw bodies in projects to get them done? Or is it truly just a lack of care to take? Because, it's not the kids' fault that they don't know how to do those things. It's just nobody ever took the time to show them how to do them, right?
I think a lot of it is, and I don't know for a fact, but the people at the top are trying to cram in as much work as they possibly can. So they're just taking on as many bodies as they can with no oversight. And these kids get on the job site, and the guys that are higher up are so focused on production that you kind of have the sink or swim mentality. And they just kind of get left to their own, the skill set.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah.
We talk about all the time, you may have one guy that actually knows what they're doing and 10 that don't. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, it looks like something's done, so that's okay.
Yeah. And that might be okay for demo or something where you're just leading guys to, huck buckets around. But when you're trying to frame something up or construct a finished piece, that doesn't work.
No.
You can't have temp labor on a custom project, it's a hard one to solve.
Well, yeah. And I think that starts at, like the school level. A lot of schools you hear about, they reduce the amount of time and energy they put into like wood shop and autos and that type of stuff. And then the kids get out of high school and they don't really have any real introduction to it. And then they kind of get desperate for a job and, oh, hey, so-and-so is hiring.
Yeah.
I'll go do that. And then there's no guidance once they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've seen it in friends of mine that, they didn't know the trade at all. They get in, and this is people that have like family businesses where there's some care, and they went from not know how to read tape to being, fine carpenters. And that's amazing. And I think those people get, seriously rewarded from that journey, but to have somebody who's just in there just to kind of get a paycheck, that's where it sucks. Right. Because it's not good for them. It's not good for the end consumer, so it's a hard problem to solve.
It is.
And I don't think that it's just our community here. I think that's probably, if it's happening here, it's happening elsewhere for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've noticed in the trades that a lot more people are ego driven. My biggest thing was always networking, right? If I can educate you or anybody else on what I'm doing, and then you can pass that information along and you have a core group of guys, it just makes the process a lot easier.
Yeah.
And when you get away from that and you're kind of forced with people you're not familiar with, well, Now
Yeah.
the process starts over again.
Well, and also that kind of marketing in your business, like when you own your own business, you were a lot heavy on referrals, right? You have to stay true to what you're trying to do, right? If you're going to be the guy who's the quality metal person, you have to be that, because when the moment somebody refers you and you become the guy who cut the corner, the whole wheel starts to fall off.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're just completely digital marketing, or you're being the cheapest bid to the contractor who wants to just make the most margin on a project, then you could probably get away with cutting those corners, because you're going to keep the ball rolling in front of you, but you're leaving a trail of destruction.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, and especially in metal, is you may get 2 years out of your caulk, right?
Mhm.
And you can hide it on the homeowner for a minute,
Mhm.
but once the caulk is broken down and your metal roof is leaking,
Yeah.
now when somebody that actually knows what they're doing is called in, you got to break some pretty terrible news to somebody that wasn't expecting to get, their entire day ruined.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So
Sometimes more than that, right?
Yeah, right,
These are big problems
right.
sometimes. I think you and I have both seen it together, where you got to tell homeowners some really crappy news. Even homeowners that have a lot of money, if we're dealing on custom homes, they still don't want to hear it.
Well, and people think that because they have the money that it's just okay.
Mhm.
And
It's not.
that's not the point.
No.
Like, it's not the point to gouge them. It's not the point to take advantage of the situation. They're trusting you. First, they agreed to what you bid it out as.
Yep.
And you agreed to it. That was what you had sent over for them to agree to.
Mhm.
Now you have to go, and even if it costs you a little bit at the end, you have to do your job.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's when you're working for wealthier people, sometimes you can give them a proposal to go the extra mile, and it's important to then go and do that.
Yes.
It's like that's the one thing. It's like sometimes people have a little more money, they want it perfect. Give them the perfect product if you're going to bid it at the perfect product. Don't give them the perfect product on bid and then go give them the Walmart version. That's fine if you're going to give somebody the Walmart version that thinks they're paying for that. But yeah.
And to that, we know a guy, or I personally know a guy that it was, do we give them the A, the B, the C, or the D? And you're like, well, wait a minute. Like, if they paid for A, like they get A, right?
Yeah.
And no.
Yeah.
And that's happening a lot,
Mhm.
right? When I own the company, my company, and what I try to pass on to Matt and everybody is, you may lose a little bit of money up front,
Mhm.
but you have to do the job right.
Yeah.
We don't get the luxury of not doing it, because when they get the phone call, the consequences. It's not a $5 fix.
No, and you might have if you it's, for instance, as somebody you merged with Elkhorn, right? If they had bought a company that wasn't as trustworthy as you may be inheriting a massive liability, right? If you went and did 100 standing seam roofs and they all leak, that's enough to put you under for sure, right? So it's important that whoever you're working with, you could stand by it.
Yeah, and
I wonder.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
A lot of because people see the dollar amount in my industry, and what's happening is you're getting people that dive in, and you're watching generational companies go under because they didn't want to try to find a guy that, like not even just me personally, but they don't want a master carpenter. They don't want, the best shingler that's out there. They don't want, the best plumber. Well, this guy's got 5 years experience. He must be really good. And that's not always the case.
No, it's not.
Right.
You could be doing 5 years of stupid stuff.
Right.
What I was going to say is, I wonder, I'm not necessarily a fan of more government agencies or oversight, but I wonder if some of it could be helped with regulation of, in order to get into a certain trade, you need a license. Like, for instance, in my industry, the restoration side of things, we have guidelines, but they're not regulations. So there's a lot of chucking a truck with a fan who's going to come out and I'm going to do mold remediation. He doesn't know what he's doing and he's hurting people. So it's kind of up to your ethics. And I think that's the same for a lot of trades. I can get a GC license or whatever, or you can work under somebody else's license. If they could maybe crack down on that a little bit, I think that might help too, where you're making the barrier to entry a little bit steeper for some of these people to get weeded out, something like that.
Yeah. And like with our suppliers too, is they just don't care. Right?
They'll supply it anyway. Right?
Yeah. Money's money. They don't do anything. when these type of people are getting sued and all that, like there's no consequence to them, maybe a little financial trouble for a minute, but
Mhm.
they changed the name, they put it, next thing you know, their kid who's 2 years old now owns the company and they're doing the same thing that got them sued to begin with, and there is no accountability in our industry anymore because we just basically need bodies, right?
Yeah.
So
maybe somebody will make a autonomous robot that can be a really great framer.
well, masons and stuff like that, they're starting to make machines that do masonry for people. And
I've even seen 3D printed concrete houses where they set up the grid and it's cool. I mean, it's a little scary, but it's cool.
And these people don't understand is that stuff would never happen if you knew how to do your job. The general you. And educate yourself. I mean, like for me personally, a lot of the question is, well, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? And then to what we were talking about before, well, do you want the guy that shows up to your house that says painting, drywall, and metal roofing? No, you don't. You want
just the metal roofing or just the drywall.
And the beauty of what we do and what Matt's allowed me to do is still in my entire career is we take a flat sheet of metal, copper, stainless, whatever, we fab it into something and it goes on your building. So you're on a more intimate level with the metal that you're putting on anyway, but then you understand the function of it too.
And that goes back to where I learned a lot from you. Is just like my first time looking at houses, and I was like standing there looking with you and some of the other guys you introduced me to, and it's like you're able to understand if you can get that close to a building, you understand a lot of the other elements that go into it. And you're like, no, it's this person has a foundation issue. It's not because of that. It's because there's a really steep roof and there's no gutters, and so it just drops down right by the and that's helped me in my business when I go. We do waterproofing now. I'll go sell people. I'm like, you don't need us to go put a drain tile system in. You need gutters.
Yeah, right.
And then if you put gutters on and then it still leaks, maybe then give us a call.
Right.
But I'm not going to go sell you something that you're going to put on your house and then it's either going to overwork because all the water still come in there. Like we want to give you the right solution, you know. And I might not always know the answer, but I'll find a way to ask the friend or whatever. It's just doing the work to make sure you're giving the customer that right thing,
Right.
Yeah. And that, but to your point, the intimate detail on something as small as that can help you fit, understand the bigger picture that you're a part of on that building,
Definitely.
Yeah. What was the transition like for you moving from owning your own shop to working under Elkhorn? Has that been, what made you want to do that?
So a few years back, I don't know if you remember my guy Joe that I had with me. Well, he ended up getting throat cancer. And well, it was kind of a blessing because he had left me just shortly before that. For him, it was a blessing. For me, it wasn't very good. And then I had went down the road of trying to find a couple people, and like we were talking about, you got to have the right person with the right mindset. And when you don't find that and you have a workload that we have, the fabbing, the meeting people, the getting the material, installing it, and then to try to do it at a high level, there just isn't enough hours in the day. And then I knew that there was a few people that had interested in what we were doing, but a lot of it was if I was to come to your company, immediately the response was, I'm going to take you out of the field and you're only going to be this. And I'm like, well, that's not really what I want to do. I felt at that time I still had a lot to prove or to do. And Matt kind of allowed me to do it. Which was nice. It's been phenomenal. You get a smart young business owner that is receptive to input, helped a lot. But then you go from basically controlling things to working with multiple personalities. And that didn't suit me at first. I'm still kind of getting used to it. But the good thing is we've laid the foundation for this is the way we do it. And there's no corners being cut. There's no,
and I think you guys are bringing up people underneath you too, right? I've seen you guys training some younger guys. And
we got a couple guys, 3 guys in their mid to young 20s.
Mhm.
And the importance is always stressed that this is the way we do it.
Mhm.
It's not that we're not against hearing you out and trying new things,
Mhm.
but until you have your sea legs, how about let's just do it this way
Yeah,
first.
yeah. And then maybe you do some of the creative work to figure out maybe a more efficient or something, yeah,
Right.
different way to, yeah.
Basically what works for you.
Yeah.
Cutting techniques with your snips or shearing techniques or anything like that. Yeah, I mean that could
Mhm.
be anything, but
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna give you the base, right?
right.
Was I mean, I remember at some points working with you where it was just you had a lot going on, right? And to your point, you're trying to wear all these hats. And you're doing all this during the day, and then you get home, and I'm sure you got to do, invoices and estimates, and then you got to actually make sure the money is there in the account and do it, and it's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Was that part of it too? Is that rewarding not to have to deal with all that, quote unquote crap?
Yeah. I was never good at it and I didn't like doing it. Like I
Mhm.
would go 3-4 months, you'd get a call from a guy like, "Hey man, I
You ever
haven't
gonna
seen
bill
your
me?
invoice yet." And you're like,
Yeah.
"I'll get to it. I'll get to it." To the point where I just got to a point where I just didn't want to deal with it.
Mhm.
There'd be certain projects I wouldn't even bill them. Like it
Mhm.
was just like, "Hey, here you go.
Yeah.
I got other things I'm worrying about."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
50, $100 doesn't bother
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Foolishly, that's just how I kind of ran it. Um, and having somebody that can take that burden off where I can focus more on what I want to be doing has
Mhm.
been huge.
Yeah. Well, because not, it's like any organization, everybody's got their strong suits. You might have a guy who loves numbers.
Right.
He's your numbers guy. You might have a guy who loves fabricating. That's what it is. And that's how you build a team, because not everybody's great at it. Unfortunately, when you're running a small business, you have to be great at everything because that's the only option you have in the beginning. Maybe you can scale it to a level where you can start to offload some of those things. But in the beginning, you got to kind of be competent at every single task in your business, which sucks.
Yeah. And,
It's not a fun spot to be in.
truthfully, when we broke off on our own, like we had no business owning a company.
Mhm.
It was just, the other things kind of worn thin. And then we're just like, we can do this because
Mhm.
we know how to do the work and
Yeah.
there's nothing that we don't know how to do.
Mhm.
But if you're not mentored or taught to how to run a business,
Mhm.
you can put yourself in a bad spot pretty quick. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
did.
Yeah.
My old business partner and I put ourselves in a terrible spot and then had to claw our way out of it.
Mhm.
So
And sometimes it's just the natural part of business and you learn from it and then you know that you're not going to make that mistake. I mean, I made those mistakes myself, right?
right.
And you're just like, okay, we're going to put that in the bucket of read the warning signs and don't go down that path again. And great. Sometimes you got to learn them that way. But also if you have a mentor that could be, hey, really got to keep an eye on X, Y, or Z so you don't go that way.
Yeah.
That's the nice part about mentorship, right? Is they've been there, done that, and maybe learn from their mistakes.
And truthfully, like we looked to a mentor and his motives weren't so pure. If
Okay.
I'm getting,
Yeah. Yeah.
like he knew the service we provided, and then when he realized he could make money at doing it,
Mm-hmm.
you'd go to look at a job to bid it, and you're like, hey, just out of curiosity, like who's bidding against me? Because they always tell you, like, oh, I'm looking at 2 or 3 bids. Well, who is it?
Yeah.
It's so and so and so and so.
You mean the guy who's advising me?
And we do all their work anyway.
Yeah.
So how crazy do you look when you pay 20,000 more and we're the guys that show up to do the work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they take the work, and in one of those instances, they took a job that they had no business doing, and then when they got bit by it, the phone conversation turns from cordial to I don't care, go
There's gonna be a
fix it.
lawsuit coming if not, right? Yeah.
And then you get there, and then the question is, well, where do we start and stop? Because you have so many things that are done poorly that it's not if it's going to fail, it's when, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that happened to us a few times, and we kind of took our lumps, and you figure it out, move on, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. That's that. I guess if you're going to be in business, you got to kind of understand that that's part of it and just embrace it. It's like, whatever, this is one part of my life and we're going to have to solve it and, and move on. It's
Right.
You can't cause everybody's going to go through things like that. You just got to learn how to take them in stride.
Right.
And then not compromise when you're making that decision,
Yeah.
So, yeah. What are the things would you like to accomplish with your Elkhorn Roofing? So you're obviously keeping your trade going and keeping the quality there. Is there any other things you're looking forward to doing or accomplishing?
Well, obviously keeping it going,
Mm-hmm.
For however long that goes, hopefully forever for Matt,
Mm-hmm.
and his family. Great. The one thing that we've been running into now and we're accomplishing quite a bit is we've been doing this so long that we've kind of came up with ideas to make our jobs easier and allows other trades to do things before us, and it doesn't interfere. And Matt had mentioned doing like a snapping system around windows, and that was cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. He when he was on the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
We just came up with. We had a contractor kind of say, we love what you're doing. And two other trades after us went in and damaged the metal to the point where we have to take it out and redo it. And they says, well, the only way that we can really have a continuing relationship, we have to figure out a way to solve this. Well, the old way of doing a trim first system on the building was a guaranteed fail, right? You're just basically relying on caulk to hold the panel in place. And then you're asking people to get up there and have faith that it cured and is going to hold them.
Yeah.
And so we put our minds together and came up with a system where we can completely trim out first and come back after the fact and still do the system how we want to do it and no leak, right? So the creativity of it is what I still enjoy doing.
Invention there somehow.
We have a few, and the pushback with that is we've been doing it this way 100 years. It doesn't make any sense. We have an offset drip metal that we came up with. And what that does is it breaks the static connection between the fascia and the steel. And with people face guarding and everything now with their ice and water shield, what happens is the water will get to the end of the D and it'll siphon back in the system. And how many times do you see rotted out fascia? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
In a lot of houses. We get calls for it at our business. Yeah.
And we came up with that. And so breaking the static connection between that and the steel, it allows the water to drip away
instead of having something that can come and curl back
and curls back up. Well, water, they say, can siphon 8 inches. Well, if you break the connection, it gets to the edge of the drip metal and then functions how it is supposed to. It'll drip away. You can't get anybody to show any interest in it because they don't understand it. And instead of, like pennies on the dollar to just do it for the owner, they just say, nope, old way. And then
you need to shake it up a little bit, right? Like it's an old industry. It needs somebody to rattle some heads.
Right. Yeah, really. And more people just need to hear you out, right? When you've been doing it so long, and not only are you fabricating it, but then you're installing it. Well, who knows better, right? You or me. And people just don't want to listen. They don't know what's best for them to a point. And that gets frustrating.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can make a roofing podcast and you can yell at a bunch of people. We'll force it down their throats.
Right. Some people need it though. I mean, this, people know they have a leak on the outside of their building and they're worried about remodeling their kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, that don't make any sense. It's leaking. Like just pump the brakes. And
yeah, we deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
Putting lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else you'd like to talk about?
I think that pretty much covers everything.
I think what you're doing is important, though. I think you're keeping some accountability alive and at least in our area, and hopefully that travels onward. Like I said, I'm grateful for the things that you've taught me, and I think the lesson is just helping kids get into the trades with some care. You know what I mean? That's my goal. Is I want to give back to the younger kids that are coming in. Like as we hire people in our industry and just in general, it's like, let's come up with ways that us as contractors and business owners in this area is like, figure out ways to give back to our younger guys so that we're not all paying the consequences when we're buying our houses and doing things like that. Right. And it just helps everybody. So I appreciate the message that you preach, and, keep doing the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, folks, that's all the time we had for this episode. We're going to end it here and hopefully catch you on the next one.